So I'm not sure how many people know this, but Herman actually can do readings on people, and they're like so full and in-depth that they go beyond what people think an actual reading is. So, Herman, what would it take for you to do a reading?
It wouldn't take much. It just requires your will to get better. It's like you, when you had your first reading, you were the very first person to ever reach out to ask for one when it was first offered.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because it was your will that you wanted to get better. Mm-hmm. Because you were not happy, you were not in a good situation, and you wanted life to be better. You wanted to know your purpose. And so for a lot of people, I think they all want the same thing. And so we want to make sure that we deliver that and share that and make the world a better place.
Well, I think we have some people here that want to get better and they want a reading. So let's do that in this episode.
Okay, so my name is Jeanette, and I met Herman 2 years ago, and I had my first Skype, and then my life kind of changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe just share the biggest thing how your life has changed.
The biggest change would be my emotions,
mm-hmm.
and how I'm able to see more of the truth,
mm-hmm.
and not being caught up in how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So way back 2 years ago,
mm-hmm.
you had your first reading.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had one since?
No.
So if we have your permission,
Yes.
would you be up for that?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, the first thing we want to make sure, like, these have to be completely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to address the issues. There's no judgment. It's just to address it so you can know to put the right solutions in place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So for a lot of people, they're always very scared and they're always very nervous.
It's true.
So is there something to be scared or nervous about?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because for a lot of people, they're very, very nervous and scared because they don't know what truth is sometimes, or they're afraid of truth,
mm-hmm.
or they're not used to truth.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as they get introduced to truth, sometimes it's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the only way we know how to be is to be honest and
mm-hmm.
truthful.
Yes.
Okay. So is it okay if we start?
Absolutely.
Okay. So first thing that shows up is you've not only have like low energy,
mm-hmm.
but you also have to make sure that you protect that energy, because what happens is you lose it too quick.
Yeah.
So let's say you're working on something, or say you stare at something for too long, energy becomes too focused, like that, mm-hmm. energy's gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a proper meal for that one day, and say you had a lot of work to do that day,
mm-hmm.
like that, energy's gone.
Yeah.
So you have to be very cautious to make sure you protect that energy
mm-hmm.
at all times. Because if you don't, when you accelerate in age, then what's going to happen is you're going to be so tired, it's going to be so difficult just to walk.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be so difficult just to even wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want that.
Mm-mm.
You want to make sure that you're focusing on eating healthier, eating
mm-hmm.
the right type of foods that you were given, and to make sure you exercise every day. So I'm not sure if you noticed that when you don't exercise,
Yeah.
energy is
Low.
but when you exercise, energy is
High.
right.
Yes.
Because you have to move the energy, you got to move the blood.
Yes.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something where a lot of people, they can relate to, because they're allergic to working out, or they're allergic to how do you say, any form of physical activity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we have to be cautious and make sure we don't become lazy, that we don't become tardy.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure we're always in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like when you look outside and you see people running, you see people riding a bike, you see people rollerblading, you see people walking in nature. How do they look?
Healthy.
Happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when they're in a cubicle, or they're sitting in traffic in their car,
Yeah.
or they're in a long line at a coffee shop? How do they look?
Unhappy.
Very unhappy because
Yeah.
motion was stopped.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yes.
So we have to make sure that if we're always meant to be in motion, let's make sure we're doing right with every action we take,
Mm-hmm.
so that that physicalness matches our mentality.
Yeah.
See, what happens is, and this is something you can relate to, a lot of people, when you first met me, a lot of the times what you think mentally is different to what you feel physically.
Yes.
So they become two separate things.
Yes.
So let's say you got upset. So mentally you didn't like what you heard.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally you want to know why. You want to know, why would they say something like
Mm-hmm.
this? Where did this come from? When did this start? You ask every single question mentally, but then physically is where you feel it.
Yeah.
So what happens is, mentally and physically, they start to separate. And then that's how you lose yourself. That's how people lose themselves. But if we want to get better, we have to say, mentally, we have to match our physicality so that we can heal.
Yeah.
So you know how people always talk about mental health is so important? Well, in the Western world, they treat it completely separate to physical health,
Yes.
as opposed to holistically that everything is one. And so to go for the next step, one thing you have to really worry and be cautious about, not worry, is when those emotions go out of check, you feel it physically, but then mentally this cannot support. So physically you can't support yourself mentally. Then what happens? Then this plays games.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden this has a voice. Then all of a sudden this doesn't want to work out. All of a sudden this doesn't want to eat healthy. This wants to maybe cheat or cut corners. All because it doesn't have the support physically. And then when you do that, then what happens? Then you want to eat things that are not great. You want to eat at off hours. You want to do things that are not good for your body, or put things in the body that are not good. So then this can no longer support the physicality. So if the mind can't support the body and the body can't support the mind, and they're separate, infection and disease start. And then that is very, very difficult to cure when people age, because once that happens, then the body no longer has the same instinct or the same healing properties so that you can protect yourself. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Next, in terms of sleep, what happens is sometimes with your sleep, you may feel you have a good sleep. You think you have an adequate amount of hours, but you wake up, it's like you've never slept before. Right?
Yes.
And a lot of that is due to your thyroid. Hormones. They're imbalanced.
Yes.
For a lot of women, they don't realize, especially when they're at a young age, when the hormones are now going through puberty and now they're trying to get to know their body, and hormones are like firing at all different ways. A lot of times in Western medicine, they misdiagnose you.
Okay.
So they will say you have a deficiency in this, or they give a label to your disease, or they give a name to the disease. And you have to be very careful not to put yourself in the box of that, because you have to know what's causing it. Sometimes when you look at people with their health, they say, I have this disease, or I have that disease. But what caused that disease? There's always a cause. And if we don't identify that cause, we become in bigger trouble when we age. And if we don't identify that cause, then if this is a problem, then we know something else is becoming a problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So for you, you have to be very cautious now to make sure that you're very strict to your diet, very strict on what you put inside, very strict on a good routine. And you have to make sure now that you set the example for your family.
Yes.
Because one of the things that holds you back from a good routine is your family.
Yes.
So the biggest thing you have to be cautious of is not to let them drag you down where they want to be miserable, or where they want you to be just unhappy because they're unhappy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you have to be cautious now of your association and environment to make sure you set the standard. You're the mother. You set the standard.
Yeah.
Everyone has to maintain a certain standard so that the house can operate. But if there's no standards and no one has any standards, then how is everyone supposed to operate cohesively, which means together?
Yeah.
You cannot.
No.
And then if you don't have time for yourself and you don't have time for them, and you're always unhealthy or they're always unhealthy, then what type of life is that when we can't perform? Then when it comes time for a job and you can't do the job, can you keep the job?
No.
Or can you get a better job?
No.
Right? If the children are not healthy enough, can they go to school? Can they get better grades in school?
No.
So we have to be very cautious now of what we put inside. And for a lot of people, they're addicted to food, they're addicted to external things, and they use that as a crutch. So you just have to make sure that you don't use that as a crutch. Sweet things specifically.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Next, you have to be very cautious of your back. So I'm not sure if you notice when you sit sometimes, when you sit, you go like this, specifically when you work too long on the computer. So you go closer to laptop, right?
Yes.
Right? When it should be like this. So I'm not sure if you notice, but when you go like this and you work for too long, the work that you do, not the same.
Yeah.
But when you are like this and you do the work, what happened?
It goes so quick.
And it shines and it shows through, correct?
Yes.
So that's why we have to make sure now that if we're going to identify all these different things, then we have to make sure that we apply the solutions right away.
Yeah.
Right? Next, you have to be cautious of your diet. Sometimes when you eat, you cannot just eat cold things, specifically in wintertime. If you do, like ice cream or anything cold like that, immediately it takes a very long time for you to warm up. So you have to be very cautious with that, because what happens is if you make your body cold, when we think of ice and it's so cold and it's rigid, does it move?
No.
So then if the blood doesn't move, then how can we have the circulation to move the energy in our body?
Yeah.
And then if we don't have the circulation to move the energy, then we don't want to work out. Then we don't want to get up.
Yeah.
Then we don't want to cook. Then we don't want to clean. Then we don't want to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So see how it's like all one vicious cycle?
It is. So it goes up, for instance, like having fruit, like having an apple that is cold. It's the same thing.
Of course, you don't want anything
Too
cold.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah, room temperature. Because when it's wintertime and you have something cold, it makes you colder faster.
Yeah.
And then it reduces your blood pressure. Very difficult for specifically women who are already naturally cold, especially during their time of the month. Very difficult to raise that blood so that they can maintain that warmth, so that they can maintain that normalcy of what they know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So we have to be very cautious of what we put in, the temperature, everything, to make sure that we don't invade or disrupt or disrespect our inside, our body.
Yeah.
Okay, next, you have to be cautious sometimes. I'm not sure if you notice, but when you go outside the home, as soon as a wind hits you,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that you feel, and where do you feel it?
Like the cold hair.
When the wind hits you first in the face, where do you feel it first?
Where I feel it first? Oh, sometimes I feel like from the inside.
So it's almost like it went through you.
Yes.
Right? So you have to be very cautious of that, because what happens is during wintertime, when we transition into the seasons, our body is used to a certain temperature.
Yeah.
So let's say we came from summer to fall, and now we're in winter. So our body was used to a certain temperature in the summertime. When that wind hits you and your body's not used to that temperature yet, or you haven't climatized yet, then people call it, oh, you caught the cold, but you didn't catch a cold. It's what happens is you caught either influenza, you caught symptoms, you caught something that was probably not where your body was strong enough to handle. So we have to be very cautious now that when we are going through these seasons, we have to protect ourselves to make sure that the season does not consume us. So that if it's cold outside, that we don't always have sickness in winter. We don't always have runny nose in winter. We don't always have sneezing or coughing in winter. We have to make sure that when we're going through our seasons, that we prepare ourselves and protect ourselves. Because if you don't, then you'll get sick very easy. And I'm pretty sure you've experienced this with your family.
Yes.
Right?
But does it, so the coldness, like the wind, what you feel, like, does it go also mentally, like on your emotions? Or
I wouldn't say mentally, but if you remember what we said, if you suffer physically, then you can't promote or sustain mentally.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how it would work.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that the wind mentally hurt you or it damaged you. No.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but because physically we're not in shape or sustainable enough to be strong enough to support ourself mentally, then the mentality itself will suffer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So does this help? Does this make a difference? Do you see things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I know that I really need to work out more. So that is really something that
you should do my type of workout.
Okay. We can start like, but still, like I know that that's something that will help me change quicker too, like to do better.
Remember what we discussed? If everyone did my type of workout, then they will not get sick.
Yeah.
But everybody's afraid of sweating or afraid of working out or afraid of work. Just the word work, they run the opposite direction.
So, but when you like suggest like for me to work out, like what type of workout do you
So for you, remember what we did? We showed you the basic exercises, the calisthenics. You have to use your own body weight. Like if you ever did any push-ups, sit-ups, or chin-ups, you want to use body weight, not machine.
Yes.
Because it's like, why would you use the machine and put stuff on a frame that's not strong enough to handle your own muscle or body weight? Make sense?
Yes.
So you have to, it's like saying you put bicycle tires on a big, huge transport truck. It cannot support the weight.
No.
So we have to make sure that we are strong enough and sustain that for a good time before we add on that frame.
Yeah.
So once you do that, and then you have to get the heart rate going, because what happens is if you don't get the heart rate going, then it becomes lazy.
So just like running?
Running's good, but remember what we said, you have to do different stages of running.
Yes.
So for a lot of people, when they think of running, they think like either 100 meters or the tiniest little jog, but they don't see the in-between. And so one thing people have to learn is when you train, and when I train a lot of these professional athletes, you have to train them at how to gauge speed. When you drive a car, you just mash the pedal and say, I'm only going to do 100 because I want to get there real fast?
No.
Can you do that in a residential area?
No.
Can you do that in a school zone?
No.
Can you do that at rush hour traffic? But then why do we live that way? Why do we live and say, no, I'm going to put go at this pace. So I need coffee, I need alcohol, I need all these other things to put in my body so I can maintain that 100 kilometer or 100 mile an hour pace, as opposed to saying, let's learn the pace that we need to be for the right situation.
Yeah.
So what I train people and show them is, okay, we do soft, slower, beginner stage. Then once you do that for a little bit, then we graduate into like a medium stage. So it's like saying, if you were to run here down to the other street and all the way back, I would show you a certain pace to run at. Then you increase that to a certain medium pace. And then once you get good at that, then we increase that to full speed pace. But and this is where some trainers I see go wrong. They just tell you, oh, it's in your head, just go do it. But let's say the person has diabetes, they're obese, and they have heart disease, and they were to run full speed ahead, they can get a heart attack.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough to sustain that run.
No.
They do more damage than good, as opposed to working up to a phase that the person knows that they're comfortable with, that they don't do any damage internally.
Yeah.
So in the summer, if you like, we can go through that.
Yes.
And maybe increase to a level that maybe you can maintain.
Yes.
That allows you now to have time on your side, where you maybe don't have to worry about aging because you're doing all the right things that aging is not allowed to ever live in your existence.
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes.
So that's why when we help people, it's not just, oh, here's a reading. No, you have to have the solution. I see so many people that claim they can do that. They tell you about this, tell you about that, tell you about a past life, and all they did was make you feel worse than you did at the beginning. That doesn't help you.
No, not at all.
And then those people, all they do is think about the past, and they do nothing in the present,
Yes.
and then the future is damaged.
I've done that.
It's sabotage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
As opposed to saying, you know what? No. If we want to know what our past life is, we look at our present. If there's things we don't like or things that we feel that's unfair, then maybe we understand that that's how we made others feel. Maybe that's what we did to others. And this is our turn to pay it back.
Absolutely.
It's repentance.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So the sooner we can make sure and fix those things and then make the solutions in place and apply those solutions, the faster we can graduate these different levels. And then the more efficient we get, the better we can perform.
And I see that is really something that's lacking from my life.
Yeah. At least you're honest.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what we can do is in the summer, we'll instigate and initiate and start that regimen to make sure that you don't have any excuse.
Yes. I need to document that.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have questions?
No, I don't think I have any now. I think it's just like, it just really feels like that's something that I've been constantly thinking of. Like, I know that I should do it, but it's just always pushing it forward. And it's something that I've never been good at doing. So, yeah.
It's time to change.
It is. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, do you see the power in that? I know that when I first got my reading, it absolutely changed a lot of the things that I considered and a lot of the things that I did. Although my changes weren't just a snap of the finger overnight, I finally had direction. I finally had something that I can work towards. I knew the right things to do and the right things to change. And so I think the readings are really powerful. Now, Herman, if there's somebody out there that, let's say they want to get a reading for themselves, is it something that you do?
Of course. And for a lot of people, they don't realize and they don't know what they don't know. So when we go through these sessions, a lot of people discover a lot of things about themselves. And that's what makes it so unique, because they're learning about themselves, but yet they've lived their whole life with themselves and they don't even know themselves. So that's why this is so helpful. And if this really appeals to you, I mean, just let us know at support@thehermansiugroup.com and let us know if you're interested. And that's what we want to do, make the world a better place.
Awesome. So we'll just link that email in the show notes in the description. You'll be able to find it. So thank you, Herman.
Thank you.